I am Professor Ryan Blumenthal, forensic pathologist from Pretoria, South Africa.
My name is Chris Milroy. I'm a forensic pathologist now based in Ottawa, Canada.
My name is Catherine Maloney. I'm the Deputy Chief Medical Examiner in Erie County, New York.
Yeah, my name is Dr. Odur Johansen. I'm a pathologist, forensic pathologist from Nairobi, Kenya.
How do I know I had a love for boats?
It is the ASFM conference, which is the African Society of Forensic Medicine conference. And gathered here are some of the world's top forensic medical experts. Join us on this special journey to discover what it's like in their world.
I mean, other things you can do, obviously, if you document some type of heritable condition, you can call families. So I've had a few people, like I had a young man who was shot in the head. He was in his 20s, and it was gang violence. There was nothing that was concerning or it wasn't a mystery. It wasn't an autopsy of discovery. It was an autopsy of documentation. But what I found is that he had hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And so I called his family, and I said, we all know he's dead because he got shot in the head, but he had a bad heart. And you need to tell your doctor, and his kids need to tell their doctor, and his siblings need to tell their doctor. And that's the way I feel like that day I'm saving lives.
We are gathered here at the CSIR in Pretoria, South Africa, with some of the world's top forensic medical experts. Let us hear some fascinating stories from them.
After med school, there were so many options of things to specialize in, and I realized that clinical medicine was just not for me. The alive patient is the most stressful patient. When you have a dead body, they don't talk back, they don't move, there's no issues. A lot of the trauma is already over almost. And I've always had a morbid sense of medicine, always thinking of the worst, darkest ways sometimes. And I felt like this was the most wonderful avenue to go into medicine and to specialize in. I am very passionate. I really love what I do. I would not deal with the living again.
How did I come about becoming a forensic pathologist on my journey? You know, the moment you asked me that question, you could see the smile on my face. It's a very long journey. For me, it's a lifelong commitment that every family should have an answer. We should work without getting tired to provide an answer. I lost a loved one when I was young. I can tell you that I understand what families feel. It's not theoretical. It's very practical. And that's why forensic pathology is a calling. What people may not consider interesting is something that keeps family awake. And there are many families that are grieving. They've never grieved because nobody has provided them answers. And that happened to me. And we had no answer. And with no answer, there's no closure. And I think even as a child, I knew what was going on. But there was something implanted in me to ensure, to the best of my ability, that no family went through the same situation my family, and I in particular, went through.
And then, of course, we add a lot of value from an epidemiological perspective. We provide insight into the social profiles of events like suicide, motor vehicle accidents, the profile of injuries that we see for pedestrians, for occupants, for drivers of motor vehicles, the profile of drugs that are being used that result in fatalities. And all of this feeds into the policy making, decision making, legislative provisions. So it's a public health function as well.
Well, for me, the children are dear. I always focus on the sub-adult, or some people refer to non-adults. In the lab, I feel we have a special responsibility towards the kids to identify them and bring closure to the families. So 2 years ago, we had this little boy that was hit to the side of the head by his father, so he was killed by his own dad. And that case was eventually solved and the identity was established, not only through my work, but mostly through the pathologist, and also the investigating officer was very good at doing his job. So yes, now and again we do have a success case.
We make recommendations, actually, infrastructure-related recommendations that we put, but they remain in our published papers. So I think one of our key roles, as much as I'm talking about this particular child death reviews, which is also sparked by some of, the latest unfortunate deaths of children who died from poisons, Tebifos, for an example, that has been our national crisis. These are preventative deaths. But when you check in terms of policy that is in place and implementation, most people today, they know that they are inspectors. But people did not know before that they're actually inspectors who are supposed to oversee some of these outlets.
Most of the work that pathologists do is pretty routine, and it's often of the same kind of thing. But occasionally there would be interesting cases. For example, the good example is the children who died recently from buying food from the spaza shop. So that was a mystery that had to be solved. And then the way that was done was to take the blood from the children and basically analyze it, and then also samples of the food left over that they had eaten, and also samples taken from the shops where they had purchased it. And obviously you can link the three when you do the analysis. So that's the kind of thing that probably most recently would have be fresh in people's minds, where the forensic chemistry lab has played a big role, and it's actually suddenly made the government realize that there's a problem here. Informal settlements don't have a scheduled refuse collection, so trash gets dumped everywhere. We're seeing an increase in lots of different pests, rodents. We're also having a problem with flies, all because of that. That's connected.
So in Denver, Colorado, up until the last few months, my office practice was dominated by drug overdoses, especially fentanyl. Why does fentanyl kill many people? It's a very dangerous drug. It's historically was used only by anesthesiologists, and then the fentanyl patch came along, and so people started self-administering a patch. But it really wasn't until illicit fentanyl started being marketed. They make these little blue, now they're multicolored, but they generally were blue tablets that were manufactured generally in Mexico and came across the border into the United States. And people actually smoke it. They put it on a piece of aluminum foil, they take a heat source and they take a straw and they smoke it. Now, you can imagine that there's no dosing when you're smoking something. You don't know how much you're getting. Number one, you don't know how much fentanyl was in that pill. Number two, when you're just inhaling the smoke, it's not like you can say, well, I'm taking 1 aspirin or I'm taking 2 acetaminophen or something like that. You have no idea how much is going into your body. And we often find the deceased individual still with the straw in their hand and the aluminum foil in the other hand. And again, it's killed tens of thousands of people in the United States.
We have to train our own. If we want to build capacity, we have to train our own. We cannot depend on people going out and coming back, because the opportunities on the outside are much better. So postgraduate specialty training in all the different specialties was introduced in the university.
In death, actually everybody's equal. Doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, pink, purple. If you're alive, you must die. And the other thing that I hate is the word high profile, because who decides who is high profile and who's not? The richest person in my area laid on the same table as the poorest person. So in death, actually everybody is equal.
I currently teach law, specifically law of evidence. law of evidence is, as far as I'm concerned, the most interesting part of law because it is the discipline that teaches you how to prove things. So in law, we can only lead some evidence in court. Some evidence you can use during the criminal investigation, but you can't necessarily use it in the courtroom. So law of evidence tells us how we prove things. What can we adduce and how can we adduce it? It teaches us what can we withhold legally. And it teaches us to what extent we should prove our cases. For example, in criminal proceedings, the prosecutor has to prove the case beyond reasonable doubt. Whereas in civil cases, the burden of proof or the standard of proof is on a balance of probabilities. So it is a very much non-black and white discipline. You have to learn the rules of evidence, and then as an advocate or a prosecutor or an attorney, you have to use those rules to get your evidence accepted. So it's a very argumentative discipline. It depends on who offers the best argument, and it's very exciting.
In Buffalo, we get a fair, where I am, it's cold, it can be very cold, especially in the wintertime. So sometimes we'll get, or often every winter, we end up with a certain number of hypothermia deaths, people dying of cold. We actually had a snowstorm in 2022 where probably at least like 60 people died basically in the cold because it was Christmas. So it was very hard to get the resources needed to kind of clear the streets. And in the city itself, there was a good 3 feet of snow, and it was many days, and people couldn't get food, and people basically would go out because they wanted food or needed resources and would freeze to death because it was like 3 degrees outside. Yeah, so that's pretty common where I am. We get a fair amount of deaths in water as well because we're right next to Niagara Falls. So a lot of those end up being suicides of people kind of jumping over the falls, or boating accidents because of the Great Lakes around us too, which are really very large bodies of water. So those are the common cases that we see kind of in my jurisdiction.